Right, so what I aim to do here is complete David's Sword in the Stone challenge with the help of many people. Um, Firstly, Vernon J Dixon, because I'm going to start with logic and build a ground-up case. The logic that Descartes uses is a dichotomist logic, either or, very subtle. I'm going to use Vernon J Dixon's logic where he does that. And the place he does that is where we take cognition and effect, that is, feeling and thinking, cognition and effect, emotions and mental, cognition and effect. Descartes starts with cognition because he sees it as superior, so he kind of just dismisses emotion and effect. So I'm going to do both and I'm also going to do either or at the same time because, I believe one does come before the other. In this case, we're not born as Descartes as a whatever, however old he was back in this, whenever it was he settled with this. We're born as children. Cognition is not our first one. So we start with effects, the emotions. The emotions that we have are not solitary. They're in response to other things, our environment. So this is getting onto an ontological basis. We come from our environment. In fact, that is the only way that individual is indivisible. That's a challenge for anyone out there. The only way that the individual is indivisible is that the individual is indivisible from their environment. So I come from an environment. The environment I come from is a social environment. Not only do I come from my mother and the union of my mother and my father, I also come from a long line of ancestors. And before that, we've got our non-human ancestors, which also have a social world. We can talk about the social world of microbes if you want, of fungi, of animals, of vegetables, plants, everything. There's a social world that exists in the interconnection between us. We know how fungi and plants have a social world. We even have a kind of language between them, chemical language. So that's our ontology. Our ontology is squarely social. And it's not this isolated thing that has been come to know. So we have the social environment which produces us. That's our ontology. And after the social environment produces us, we then come to know the world through emotion first. I feel, therefore I think. I think about the emotion, therefore I act. And in this case, the act of the thought I am, that in itself is, it's a behavior which establishes that I am a being. However, that I am comes from the I am of other beings in a social context, so it's not isolated. This is kind of where we now get to our epistemology. So with our ontology, we can see how our ontology is social. I'm going to show what that is idealist, how that stems to idealism as well. But now we're going to epistemology, and that really shows about idealism. If you look at how I know things empirically, it's through my senses. It's through all my senses, and all my senses, there's an extra sense. Let's call it the common sense, between which there is a lens and ourselves and the world. And if we don't know what this lens is telling us, this common sense, what our worldview is, then we're not going to really understand how we're viewing the world, and we're not going to understand how others view the world, because they all have their own lenses. So I need to know not only this lens, but myself. I need to know this lens in order to know myself. I need to know myself. I need to know this lens. And the more I know others, the more I can know myself and my lens. The more I know other lenses, and I can know my lens. And I can see the world more clearly through my own lens and through their lens. And it just reverberates. So that's an idealist epistemology, because really idealism is rational because empiricism demands a form of idealism, in the sense that it requires the mind behind the senses to know things. And this all brings me back now to the ontological argument for idealism. Because we come from a social construct of the social world of microbes to animals, we also begin from minds. And this is where we have to look at minds, and we have to look at, this is a sort of form of meta-idealism, in that, okay, so we can't say that base objective reality, which we don't actually have an objective reality, it's actually intersubjective, because it's called empiricism, and then we have to know it subjectively and confirm that intersubjectively with others. that's the way things work. So final thing I ought to say is David narrows the goalposts on this challenge and asks us to build a ground up case. And it's a rational thing to do. At the same time, it's a linear thing to do. So in a way, it's kind of too rational. And that boxes us in. As you saw, I had to go back, I had to go forward, I had to go in different places. It's a non-linear process of building a worldview. And where a worldview actually comes from is environmental, which I've shown in my papers. Yeah. So it's a narrowing of the goalposts, and we probably ought not to do that and just leave things a bit more open. Yeah, instead of trying to refine things down. So on ontological idealism, it suggests that we come from a social world and we come from minds to varying different degrees, and this leads us to the idea of meta-idealism, in that we can't say for sure that before there were the degrees of minds of which we know, let's talk about from microbes, just the living things, living minds, organic minds. Just because we know that there are these kinds of minds, we can't say that these kinds of minds came from another kind of mind. We can't say that for certain, although it's probably the case in some way, to some degree. What we can say, though, is that reality produces minds, because at the end of the day, as I said in our conversation, idealism is about mind dependence. It's about saying that reality is based upon dependence on minds. So what I'm saying is, if you call reality objective, and you mean what you actually mean by that is empirically intersubjectively verified, becoming some sense of a meta objective, then okay, that is mind dependent, because it comes from the mind that is behind the senses, or is the accumulation of the senses, whichever way you want to look at it. Yeah. So with the degrees thing, I think that's really important to understand the degrees. Like, if mind produces, if reality produces minds, then and it produces different degrees of minds, then at what degree does that begin and end? And that gives us an ontological, teleological argument about idealism. So because David has been using either or thinking, just like Descartes was, as I said in the beginning, he thinks that idealism and rationalism are not compatible. He thinks they have to be antagonistic. And this is the whole thing about dichotomy. It's not really about the either or, it's about the antagonistic quantity of the either or, the quality of the either or. And this is the thing about diunital both and thinking. It's not that it rejects either or, it uses either or in a complementary way. Black and white are complementary. Idealism and rationalism are complementary. Male and female are complementary. Masculine and feminine are complementary. Dark and light are complementary. People are complementary. David is set up this antagonism thing, and it's not just him, it's a lot of people who set up, and it's me, I do it, I did it with David because I felt it was necessary at the time, we set up this antagonistic either or dichotomy, and it's got us as far as we could, and we've done really well. Now we've hyper-modernized and we've Metamodernism, and that's why dialectic thinking is needed. Yeah. See you next week, guys.